we're here. Sorry, whew, I had to eat some snacks quickly.
That's what you need.
She is always hungry.
Mm. All right. Welcome
Hello,
back to
everybody.
TBR Lowdown.
I have to fuel, or I can't make it through.
We do what we got to do, man. Do what we got to do. Oh, here
I
we
don't
are.
mind this lime LaCroix. I don't mind it.
Oh, I think that's the popular one.
We
People
usually
like
get
that flavor.
limoncello.
Oh,
Limoncello's our favorite.
yes,
But
that's good.
yeah,
That's
and the
good.
grapefruit. Pamplemousse. We like that one.
Mm.
Anywho, what have you
Yeah.
been reading?
All the things. All right. So I am officially on my final Tana French book, The Witch Elm.
One day I'll get to those.
I love her. So this is a standalone book. So I already read her Dublin Murder Squad series, and then I read The Searcher and the Hunter, which is a series, and this is a standalone. Is this her? This might be her first book. I'm not sure. It might be her debut. Anyway, The Witch Elm. We're introduced to a young man. What is his name? See, sometimes I don't know names either. I don't remember his name. We're introduced to this young man, and he works for, I don't know, some corporation. And he's working on some like non-profit type of like art project that deals with underprivileged kids with another friend of his. And he finds out that his friend has been lying about a particular artist, and that it's actually him doing the artwork. And it wouldn't be so bad, but like they've got like funding from organizations for this project. And the friend is really freaked out about being, found out. But our main character is like, I don't really see anything wrong with it. Let's just roll with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so obviously crap hits the fan. David's boss finds out. He fires the other guy, but decides to keep David on. David himself is in a great relationship. And he's like a privileged kind of a guy. Like his parents would bail him out if he needs something. They do a lot for him. He's one of those lucky guys, right? And his friends always tease him about it, about being so lucky. Well, one night David is home, and something or some people or something comes into his home and attacks him. And it is brutal. I mean, he had to have surgery on his brain. His face is now like a little disfigured and just really messed up. He's got a lot of recovery and a lot of physical therapy that he has to do. So now all of a sudden, this once very good looking, very lucky guy has all of these new health ailments that he has to deal with and all of this recovery. And he ain't feeling so lucky anymore. And so he's navigating, trying to get through that. His girlfriend is stuck by him because she loves him so much, so he's solid there. But he wants to kind of go away and start something anew, and that's kind of where I left off in the book. So I really like what I've read so far. This main character is like really hard to like because he's kind of an a-hole. It's like, you want to feel bad for him. You want to show some empathy for him, especially right now because he's going through a lot. But like just 2 weeks ago, you were such a dick to your friends. So it's like it's really, really hard. But I'm excited to see where this book goes. And as usual, Tana French just writes it beautifully. So I'll keep you posted. But that's The Witch Elm by Tana French.
One day I will get there and I will go through all of those. If you're going to talk about a little sort of thrillery book, I guess I can talk about this thrillery book I just finished. I finally, why can't I pick it up? I finally read The Cloisters by Katie Hayes.
Oh, I like that one.
Oh, then you're not going to like what I have to say.
Oh.
It's not that I don't like it. It's that this is like, you ever read a book and you're like, yeah, that was solidly a book. Like that was,
Yeah.
yeah, that was a book. That's kind of how I feel. Like I kind of feel like I'm never going to remember it again. Like
You won't. And that's okay.
it did what I needed it to do. I'm gonna pass it on on Pango, but it wasn't bad by any stretch of the imagination. I don't believe that our main character in her hour of need would find a payphone in this day and age, even in upstate New York. Um, but it was fine. So essentially, we have this young woman who's in between college and grad school. She's not going anywhere. Her dad was, her parents were like associated with this school, this like liberal arts school that she went to out in Washington. Um, and her dad has died. He had an accident. He's dead. And she ends up going to New York. She thinks to do some sort of summer program with the Met.
Mm-hmm.
And she gets to New York, and the lady at the Met's like, "Oh no, we don't have a job for you because this person went off to wherever, whoever you're supposed to work for, went off somewhere, and so I have nothing to do. Like, sorry, kid, no work for you."
Right.
And this guy sees her in the office and basically is like, "Hey, you can come work for me." And he's heading up whatever research stuff over at the cloisters in Fort Tryon Park. And I did like that part. I liked getting to sort of see a little bit more into the cloisters because I always forget the cloisters exist,
Right.
and they're really quite lovely. And I liked the connection with the occult and the strange cast of characters that's working over there with them. He's got this young superstar rich woman working for them. She's going to like Yale next year to do whatever. And then there's like the gardener who's also in a band, and he's also selling like things to rich women in the farmers market from
Mm-hmm.
made out of the herbs from the cloisters. And um and they get like wrapped up in this all this stuff trying to basically like figure out what's the first tarot deck kind of, and establishing almost like tarot as art, as an art form, and children.
Yeah.
um and all that. And things happen, someone dies. It's a thriller. It's a thriller. Some of the twists were kind of predictable.
Mm-hmm.
um some of them were kind of like a little crazy, like when you find out what happened to her dad. I was kind of like, oh, okay, interesting, because
Yeah.
I'm fairly certain my dad wouldn't have said that to me. Okay. um right, weren't you just kind of like, no, I don't think my dad would have said that. But is she a reliable narrator? I don't know. But yeah, I mean, it was fine. So I guess if you like are at your library and you see it and you're like, I just need like a a book.
Yeah.
Going to the beach. I'm gonna be on a long car ride.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Right?
It's true.
Yeah.
I didn't keep mine either, but I traded mine at McKay. But it was a great like day read. It was great. It's
Yeah.
fun.
It was fine. It was fine.
Yeah.
It was like painfully fine. Like it was just fine.
Yeah. Good
But the
job.
payphone thing, I was like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I don't care. Just because it's upstate New York, you think you're gonna find a payphone in our
Right.
year of our Lord? When was this written?
Right.
2022?
Exactly. Exactly.
No.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You really lucked out if you found that payphone then.
You sure did. You
'Cause I
sure
haven't
did.
seen one in a decade. So anyway.
So funny.
Anywho, what are we doing here today?
Well, today we're going to share 5 of our top books of 2024.
So not our
Um,
painfully mediocre reads.
yeah, basically, basically. This was hard. This was hard. I it's funny because I was drafting my Substack to talk about my favorite reads of the year, and there's a lot. So look at my Substack to see what all of my favorites are. But we're just going to give you 5 of each, so a total of 10 of our favorite books from 2024. That does not mean they were published in 2024, just that we read them in 2024. All right.
Yeah, I have a lengthy list. My video goes out this evening as of
Mm-hmm.
recording for fiction, and then I separated out nonfiction because I had a chunk. So this is just a little
Yeah.
smattering from that list.
Mm-hmm.
Tend to have a hard time narrowing it down. I don't know how people do like these are my top 5 how.
Yeah. I don't even
But
I don't even try. I don't even try.
I also don't rank them like that, and I don't I read too much. Like
Yeah.
it's there's just too many books, and I'm not, you know, like some people are really just brutal. I'm not that brutal. Like most of my
Yeah.
books, I feel like are like 3.5 to 4-star reads, right? Like I'm
Yep.
not that. It's I have to really dislike a book to put it under 3 stars, and I have to really dislike a book. I have to like really love a book to give it 5, you know?
Yeah.
But I can give it 5 for a lot of reasons.
Yep.
So
Exactly.
so yeah. Anyway, do you
Yeah.
want to go first while I wrap up this row? So I'm working
Sure.
on working on something.
Sure. And for me, these are in no particular order because I do not rank books.
Yeah.
Okay. I do not rank them. So, this is Victim by Andrew Boriga, I think. And I talked about this book very early on in 2024. Doubleday sent me a early copy of this. And so this was one of the first books that I read the first quarter of the year. And I absolutely loved it. So let me see if I can get my brain together here. So our main character Javier is in school and he has a goal to become a writer. And while he is trying to get himself together to apply to school, he's working on his, college essays, and he's consulting with one of his teachers on his essays, and basically is his teacher is trying to get him to understand that you like basically got to beef it up, right? These college admissions people want to see like certain things in these essays, and so you've got to like tell a fib or two, liven it up. And our main character Javier takes this to like the next level in so many ways, where he builds this entire persona that is like built on lies, and the way things just go so off the rails in this book was so entertaining and so funny. I think Andrew is a super clever writer, and this was just a great joy to read. I have so many annotations in here. I have so many things tabbed. The characters were phenomenal. I felt like I knew and loved all of them. It was just a great read. So I highly recommend that. Victim by Andrew Boriga.
I remember you talking about that, actually, now that you're
Yeah.
talking about it. And it's like, yeah, that did sound really good.
Mm-hmm.
um I already told Naomi this, but I don't have a lot of these books. So I don't have a lot to show for the video watchers out there. So if you're listening to the podcast, you are doing this correctly for me. Uh, so I'll start with Committed on Meeting and Madwoman by
Mm.
Susan Scanlon. I think that this really defined a lot of my reading for 2024. It really set me like kind of on a path of looking at different books that are written by women about madness. This is Susan's memoir about this period where she spent living in this institution in New York City back in the 90s,
Mm.
um, and how that experience went, how it kind of affected her life going forward, how that's also like a treatment program that doesn't really even exist anymore. They don't do things like that anymore. How even psychiatric help has changed over the years. You get a little touch on that. And you
Yeah.
also get a little touch on all this literature. There's so much literature mentioned by Susan Scanlon, and it's all wrapped into mental health, psychiatry, and in particular, like women and mental illness. Because there's so much around um, women and their mental health, and like you look at things like the the breast cures they would put people on, and the amount of authors that have suffered through that, and then there's all the lobotomizing and all this other stuff that was gone on through the years, and um there's this like just this really rich wealth of history, and I really it made me want to hear women tell their experience like in their own
Right.
voice, even if it's like in fiction. I want to hear us explain what seems to be unexplainable, like people, the amount of disconnect, like, or just brushing things off, like, oh, you're just anxious, it's fine, and no, I'm not
Right.
just like, or like, "You just need to smile." Like, uh,
Yeah.
um, so, yeah, so it's brought some interesting people. I think, like, Janet Frame is an author that I read from for the first time this year, and I really enjoyed that. Um, I've been slowly building a list over on my bookshop.org of just books that fall into this category. Um, so yeah, it's gonna be a long time journey, so that had to be on this list because it just had so much impact on my reading.
Wow. Um, that is on my list for sure. Yeah, I can't wait to read that one.
Yeah, I think you'll
Yeah.
enjoy it, it's interesting.
Yeah. All right. My next one is and I've talked about all these books on the pod. Oh no, I've talked about all but one. The last one I haven't talked about, but I did talk about Consent, a memoir by Jill Cement. This is still roaming around in my head. Um, so Jill Cement met her husband when she was, I think, 18 or 19, and he was 50 something, I believe. The exact ages escape me, but it's something around there. And he was married with children, and he left his wife and family to be with her. Then they got married and they spent an entire life together. When he passed away, she decided to, I guess, put this memoir together. She wrote another memoir some years ago. And so in this memoir, Jill is examining and investigating her own marriage, um, and also going back and um, looking at her first memoir and just kind of interrogating her her first memoir and interrogating the marriage that she shared with this much older man. And I've never read anything like this before. It's so interesting, and her thoughts in the beginning about her and her husband and her thoughts now. And she's sharing all of these various moments, and it's just, as a reader, it was just so hard to wrap my head around, because like she had this, which seemed to be a lovely life with this man, but also some of these things she's recounted are just so icky, and uncomfortable. And so you're just in this constant state of not really sure how to feel, because it's such a precarious situation. But this was a phenomenal piece of writing, for a memoir, and I highly recommend it. I've just ordered her first memoir so I can read that. But please read Consent by Jill Cement.
I do. I just mm, I'll just have to read it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know how to
Yeah.
process what I was trying to say.
I mean, I can't process what I read fully. It was a lot.
This is the second time I've heard you talk about it, and I'm like, "Yeah, I still need to read that."
Yeah. Yeah.
So we'll
All
go with
right.
another one that I really loved, and that I don't think gets enough love on the interwebs and stuff, and that is Dayspring by Anthony Oliveira.
Oh, I have that in my
And,
cart.
oh, I need to own this. I have it on ebook, but I don't have it, physically. I think it was, like, sold out when I wanted to read it. Um, it is so good. It is this, like, playful narrative, like, how he plays with the writing, um, not playful in tone, about Jesus and his lover, one of his disciples. And it's like he plays with like structure and stuff, and it's beautifully done. And if you listen to it along with the audio, like if you read along with the audio, I think that that is the best way to experience this because it has
Mm,
a full cast, and like the way that they dramatize this is just so beautifully done. Um, like time kind of like blends in on itself.
yeah.
It's a little bit like you're not quite. are you in the present? Are you in the Bible? Where are you? So there's like a little bit of unsettledness in terms of time, but it's almost irrelevant because it's the things we're discussing are above that, like are greater than that, and I just it's an absolute experience, and I think there's an interview that I have linked I think 1,000 times that he does with I can't remember who. And it's so phenomenal. And I love it. I love the way he looks at like the queer relationship with religion.
Mm,
Um, and I can kind of understand maybe why it doesn't get talked about a lot because I feel like this is going to piss people off. But like, I want it to piss people off because like this is a Jesus who like has sex, who pisses, who gets
yeah.
drunk, who like farts, who, is a person. And like that's really that's who you are. Like we've gone so far beyond what we're so far removed from like the source material. You know what I
Mm,
mean?
mhm,
So like
mhm.
why couldn't this be Jesus? This could be Jesus. Like
Right,
anything could be. I mean, if you've gone as far as you've gone uh through all the iterations of Bibles and different sects of religions, et cetera, et cetera.
right.
I mean, so I loved it. I just think it's so good. It's so brilliantly done. It's lyrical. It's so good. And like even like Jesus's words are in red and like the regular text is
Ha,
in black. It
yeah.
is it is so freaking it is well thought out, well executed. The way he plays with form and stuff is just phenomenal. There's even like he plays with silence. So
Mm.
there's just a section that's like blank. Like it is
Oh, wow.
good. It is really, really good. It is a phenomenal book. Um, yeah, please read it. And I'll just gonna
Wow.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Wow. All right. So I'm gonna just probably just go ahead and place that order. Okay, my next one is one again. I talked about this on the show. One of the best fantasy books I have read like ever, and that's Dreams of the Dying by Nicholas Lutzow. I think that's his name. A nice, good old chunky book. Oh, and also because I follow the author and I'm on his Patreon, book two is coming. There's no date yet, but book two is coming, and I am very excited. So, okay, this book is a lot. So let me get myself together. All right. So we have Jesper, who has been hired to figure out why the this merchant king of this country called, Archipelago of Calais, um, to find out why this king has fallen into some sort of a coma. No one can figure it out. And so Jesper has been hired to investigate this situation. The issue is the archipelago of Calais is basically about to, have civil war. And the only one that can stop it is obviously the king. And so Jesper hooks up with this other lady and they begin this investigation and they meet this other guy. I think his name is Kawu or something. I don't know how to pronounce it. Kawu. And what Kawu is able to do is like seep into people's like dreams and communicate with them. And so throughout this story, it's like this guy Kawu is going into these different dreamscapes trying to investigate what's going on in the king's mind. It's astounding. It's just so good. And so it's a really long mystery, trying to figure out what's going on and why this guy won't wake up and what's happening with him. And then at the same time we get a little bit of a love interest story with Jesper and Kawu, um, and the woman that Jesper is with, so it gets a little romantic there. But it is one of the most interesting fantasies I've ever read. It's very intricate, there's a lot going on, but it's a thick book and it really holds your attention. No page is wasted, in my opinion. So anyway, that is a very short description of this book, but highly recommend Dreams of the Dying by Nicholas Lutzow. book two's coming, and whenever it's ready for pre-order, I will be pre-ordering that immediately.
I do need to to just get on that one because it does sound really good.
It's so like, it touches on like mental illness and love, obviously, queerness, identity.
Mhm.
Like there's a lot going on in that book.
But look how big it is. Of course, it's gonna be a bit before
Yeah.
you get book 2.
Yeah.
It's the problem with
It's so good.
fantasy. Sometimes you're just, waiting so long for
Mhm.
books. It's my complaint about fantasy.
I know.
Uh, so I'm gonna feel like I'm cheating here a little bit, but I'm gonna go "I Who Have Never Known Men" by Jacqueline Hartman because I feel like I need to read it again. I've seen it. I have a bunch of friends that have been reading it
Right.
recently, and it's got me thinking about it. And then, I'm doing my wrap ups and it's in there. And I'm just like, I need to do another read of this book because it's just so dang good. We have a whole discussion on it. So
Mhm.
you can hear all of our thoughts on it. But it's just this slim little book about these women that have been living in this cage underground. One of those women happens to actually be a child who knows no other life other than this cage. One
Yep.
day, all the men that were keeping them in this cage disappear, and they happen to be able to get out. They go up, they eventually go and explore this strange world they're in, and there's nobody else. And what do they do from here? And that's it. The story
Yeah.
goes on from there. And it's it packs a punch.
Yeah.
I love a short book that is just exquisitely executed.
Yes.
There's something extra special about that. I'll love me a long book, right? I'll read a long book. That's fine.
Mhm.
But there's just something extra special about being able to just tighten it all up into this little package and knock up such a punch like this does and some other ones. So I had to, and I have to read it again soon.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about it. So it's got to make our little highlight reel here.
You know what's funny? The last 2 weeks of December, the 2 books that I kept, well, 3. The 3 books that I kept seeing every day, all day for the last 2 weeks of December was, Blood Over Bright Haven by M.L. Wong, I Who
Hmm.
Have Never Known Men, and Fever Dream.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Fever Dream. Interesting.
Mhm. Yeah.
Maybe because they're short, but they're good though.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Fantastic.
Well, that's what I got.
All right. My next one is Nuclear War by Annie Jacobson. When I talked about this on the show, I talked
Hmm.
about how much this book terrified me, and it did, and it still does, and it sent me down a really crazy rabbit hole of
I,
nuclear
s-
bombs.
I still don't want to read it because I don't think I can handle it.
It's it's a lot, and I don't even know why I want to read it again. As terrified as it made me, I want to read it again, which makes no sense. But she basically gives you a scenario of if what if someone sent the nuclear bomb, like what would happen, and she goes through it minute by minute. And I also think that's what also makes you so anxious reading this book is like the countdown of the horrific things that will happen once that bomb is off. So just know this is not a light read because it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible.
It was
And
wait. Was anybody listening and thought nuclear war light read?
I mean, true, but like it's so detailed. It's just so damn detailed. I
It's not a light read.
But
I
I don't
don't can
think
they
many people understand like what would happen minute by minute.
I need them when they put out a paperback, I need them to reprint that and
Not a
somewhere on
light
the
read.
blurb it's gonna say, "Not a light read, Naomi from TBR Lowdown."
Like this isn't some just like a brief overview of, how the nuclear bomb was made or whatever. This is like minute by minute what happens. And yeah, it's terrifying, but read it because it was also very good and very educational. So that's Nuclear War by Annie Jacobson. She has another book or two. Yeah, First Platoon, and Area 51. I'm gonna read those eventually. Like I'm not in the rush, but like eventually I'll read those because I think this was very well done.
I just hope that if we're in this scenario, I'm in the vaporized section and I don't have to know any of this.
Pretty much, pretty much. Because from the way she lays things out, you don't want to survive that.
No, I don't. I do not have that much of a desire to suffer. So, no, I don't.
Right.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
Uh, so my next one I don't have, and I talked about it in a recent episode. It may have been the one just before this. I don't know. So we're going to talk about it again, but it comes out in February, so I wanted to mention it, and that is The Echoes by Evie Wild. If you did not listen to the episode where I talked about it, go back and listen to it. But I will refresh. So it's the story of a young woman living in London. We are moving between like different times. You see her with her partner in London, and you see how she's resistant to going back to her home in Australia and introducing him to her parents. We go to the past when she's, a child growing up in Australia, and we start to see why she's so resistant to everything. We also find out that she's living like the home where they live is an old residential school
Hmm.
for Aboriginal children. So there's a lot of just sadness, and there's something off just about even living there. And there's also this ghost narrator, and it's just this beautifully executed story about like generational trauma and love, and um, just it's so funny. It's so good. It's so good. I cried. It is heartbreaking. It is just the way that the storytelling is so good. The way that she layers in all these narratives, then, now, past, present, to make this slowly unfolding story, to really like draw you in and make you feel everything. And it's so good. And it's like, I
Mm.
don't, it was it February 18th, something like that. Go get it, please. It's out in the UK and in Australia. So if that's you, it's already taken care of. But it'll be out in the States in February, and it's so wonderful. And I need to read more Evie Wild. I don't know if she has another book or if this is a debut. I think she's got at least one other book.
I feel like she has one.
Um,
That name sounds familiar.
yeah, and I need to know what her other writing is like, because oh, she's got a couple. She's got several. Oh, excellent. After the Fire, A Still Small Voice, Everything is Teeth. I just like that name. All Birds Singing, The Bass Rock. I'm here. I'm here for it.
Yeah, yeah.
So I highly recommend. Have to keep it on this list.
Fantastic.
Again, you're going to hear it
Fantastic.
again. Probably like 2 weeks in a row, but that's
That's
okay.
all right. That's all right. All right. My final book is a pre-order that I read because once I found out about this book, I was like, oh, I have to read that immediately. So pre-order it is. And that is Grown Woman by, I think it's pronounced Sarah Johnson, or is it Sarai? I don't know. This book was phenomenal. I just glanced over the inside flap to make sure that I don't spoil anything. All right. So I think I'm good. All right. So we're dealing with four generations of women. And we start off in 1974. We meet Charlotte, who is 18, and she is pregnant and she has left home, a privileged home. She had a privileged upbringing, but she was supposed to go away and get rid of this baby. And she decided that she could not. So she had this baby and she tried to make a life with this child. She ends up meeting a man, and they get married and they build a life together with this child. And that child's name is Corinna. And then when Corinna becomes a teenager, she gets pregnant and she has a baby. Wait, let me get these names right because there's three C's. Camille. So Charlotte has Corinna as a teenager. Corinna as a teenager gets pregnant, has a baby, and that baby's name is Camille. Well, Charlotte and the husband, I think his name is David, I could be wrong, they turn into the best grandparents ever. They are in love with Camille. She is the apple of their eye. They do anything for her. And Corinna and Camille live with Charlotte and her husband. Camille has extraordinary talents. And all anyone in this family wants to do is ensure that whatever gifts that she has, that they are nurtured. And so Charlotte and Corinna make a decision, and this is really hard for Charlotte because all of these years, Charlotte has had no contact with her mother. Her mother writes her letters often, but Charlotte never ever responds. They are very distant. And so they make a decision to contact Evelyn, who was Charlotte's mother, to basically ask them could they help with Camille and allow Camille to live with her because she lives in the city in DC where there's better access to things. She has a lot of money. And she agrees. And so it's the story of these three women coming together, putting aside their differences to ensure the well-being of Camille and to ensure that she has every single opportunity that wasn't afforded to the others. And it's this beautiful story about love and forgiveness and grief, and just seeing these women pull together for the sake of this child was so beautiful. This was an excellently written story. The characters are so fully fleshed out. I couldn't recommend it more. It was phenomenal from start to finish. I mean, this book will reel you in and hold you tight until the very last page, and that is Grown Woman by, I think, Sarah Johnson. Whatever she writes next, sign me up. I'm pre-ordering.
I think it's Sarai,
Sarai.
but
Okay.
what I don't know.
I don't know
It's
either.
however she tells us. She says her name.
Yeah.
So that does sound really, really good. I don't think I've seen that before.
I thought I would
Interesting.
see it more, but yeah,
Interesting. You
very
just
good.
love a family saga.
I do. I do. I do.
Um, well, my final book is a more recent nonfiction read, and that is Reading Lolita in Tehran, a memoir in books by Azar Nafasi. I'm going to talk about it again because I just
Mm,
think it's important.
yeah.
And I love the way this memoir is written. Um, so, our Azar Nafasi she was professor in Iran, in Tehran, and she spent some time outside of Iran, and then, came back when she was, a teenager or whatever. Like, I think she went to school outside in Europe or something. So she's worldly, right? And so she's a teacher. She loves literature. She loves Western lit. She also loves her country. And she lives through, the Iranian Revolution, the Iraq-Iran War. She eventually does leave. Like, years later, she lives through all the changes at the university, all the changes culturally. She lives through. She is the generation that, like, the women got rights and then lost rights. She lives in a very, like, interesting chunk of time, right, in Iran. So, and all the while she's teaching these classes, and she eventually sets up this class for the girls, like a group of girls, to come and talk about books that they love. So talk about Lolita, talk about Pride and Prejudice, talk about um, Henry James, talk about all these books. And the memoir is structured where you're kind of moving back and forth between looking at the literature and looking at her life at the time that they're talking about these books.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a wonderful way to just celebrate literature and also look at life and how books are so important to your life and how they can become these, like, touchstones during chaotic moments, things that are bigger than you, when things are just out of control. I was very annoyed. I was reading some reviews. There are some negative reviews of this that are like, there are a couple where I was like, or did you miss the point of this?
Mm,
Um, because it sounded like people were annoyed. There were some people that were annoyed that there wasn't, I guess, more focus on like what was actually happening in Iran. And it's just like, that's not, it's a memoir. It's their life. This is not
right.
going to be like the definitive history of Iran. Right.
Yeah.
So it's this lady's life and experience, and literature is a huge part of her life. And she was a professor that taught literature. And to have like lost the ability to do that in a lot of ways and to have all these restrictions on her life, it makes her hold faster and tighter to the things that she cares about. They're like making photocopies of like Lolita and sitting around and reading them and like over tea in her living room or whatever. So I loved it. I think it's just like a beautiful celebration of books and their powers, and a look at uh, what it's like to have freedom stripped from you.
Yeah.
A look at her life. It's so good. I was like frantically like bookmarking things on the
Hmm.
audiobook because I was like, oh, that'll be my car read. I'll listen to it, and I was like, no, I need to get the book. So I'm gonna have to do another listen because I was like trying to underline my bookmarks. But
Right.
there's just so much great. It's there's so many great chunks of writing and like wisdom and insight in here. I think I did see some criticism as well around some of the literary criticism that's in here. I don't think it's supposed to be, the best literary criticism that's ever existed. I think it's supposed to be an idea of looking at literature as more than just the books you read. Like they have impact. These authors are saying things. They can be bigger than just pages with words on them. Um, and so I love it as a celebration of something I love,
Yes.
which is reading, and the importance of that, and the
Yeah.
importance of sharing ideas and how these things can connect us and inform us. And yeah, I'm going to start waxing on and on, but I love
Yeah.
it.
That sounds fantastic. Next time I'm at McKay, I will keep my eye out for that on that for sure.
Yes.
That sounds
Yes, yes,
wonderful.
yes. It's very good.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, we got through our five each.
Yeah, it's like a little highlight reel.
I like it. All
Mhm.
right. Well, let's commence some more books. Book
Yeah, if that's
recommendation
not
time.
enough, we have some book recommendations.
Yeah.
Do you want me to go?
Sure.
Well, I finished because I couldn't stop The Hours by Michael Cunningham.
Mhm.
This story is so good, and I know you said you're going to read it.
Mhm.
Read Mrs. Dalloway first if you haven't
Oh,
already,
I am. I am.
because I knew that these were connected because there's a storyline in here that is Virginia Woolf, and then there's two other women that it follows. There's Virginia Woolf at the time that she's writing Mrs. Dalloway. There's another woman in like the 50s whose name is Mrs. Brown, and she's like baking a cake for her husband's birthday. She's pregnant. She has a young son. You can tell that she just wants to stay in bed all day and read Mrs. Dalloway. Like um, she's having like issues coming to terms with the fact that she's like a wife and a mother. Um, and they're like complex having issues. Like it's not, she's, she's not really sure why she got married. There's nothing really wrong with him. Like there's, you know, she's questioning a lot of things. She's in existential crisis. Okay.
Yeah.
And then you're in like I don't know, is it like the 80s or 90s? In New York with Clarissa Vaughn. And she's like kind of, I guess, the main character of this whole thing. And all these stories kind of converge in a really interesting way at the end. Clarissa is on her way to get flowers for a party, just like Clarissa and Mrs. Dalloway, because Clarissa is throwing a party for her friend Richard, who is getting this like big award. He's a poet. He also he's dying from AIDS. He is on some sort of, it's got to be like the late 90s because he's on
Mhm.
like certain protease things that are like destroying his brain, but
Mm.
like his body's kind of okay. Like he's obviously like, he's sick, he's immunocompromised, he's all those things, but like he's kind of losing it because of the meds. The meds are affecting him heavily. Um, and he's just like this really sad character, and he really is like Septimus in Mrs. Dalloway. There's like a lot of these real life real life characters in the other two storylines that
Mhm.
mirror the like some of the characters very closely that are in Mrs. Dalloway. And it just was for somebody who really knows Mrs. Dalloway. It's such a wonderful read
Yeah.
to see all the ways that he like entwines that novel with his own novel. That's brilliant. And
Mhm.
even if you don't know Mrs. Dalloway very well, it's just a brilliant novel. You're watching, we open with Virginia Woolf. Spoiler, if you don't know, she kills herself. You open with her suicide, and you're following her as she walks into the river and all this stuff. And it's like beautiful and sad. And you see
Mm.
her husband like finding out that she's left and reading her note to him. And that note is like heartbreaking. And you really connect immediately with Virginia. And you also see her throughout, trying to write this narrative. And you see how much of herself sort of flows into characters. Um, and there's things that she doesn't ultimately do in the final text that you're seeing her kind of work out as like as a writer. Would I want to have my main character do X, Y, and Z?
Right.
Um, and then, you're watching these women suffer through in different points in life. They're suffering through different crises, different mental moments, like pressures. Clarissa's watching her friend die, and like Mrs. Brown is trying to figure out her life, and Virginia's trying to write this damn story, but she keeps
Mm.
also trying not to have another mental breakdown at the same time.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's just beautiful, and then the way it all intertwines, it's so masterfully done. I love it. I need to watch the movie. I'm going to do that tonight when I'm in bed with the children, and we're going to watch this. Uh,
Yeah.
I know I win the Pulitzer. This was phenomenal. So, so, so good. But I highly recommend, if you've never read Mrs. Dalloway, read it and then read this, because you will see like the ways he's beautifully intertwined people. There's obvious things like Clarissa is really kind of Clarissa, but like Richard kind of becomes other people. And then like the daughter in this is like, there's just, you can see how he's really, he knows this story so well. And I have a soft spot for stories that touch on the AIDS epidemic. I just really
Yeah.
do. And I didn't know that going into it. So when like and they don't, I think it's interesting is he doesn't say that Richard has AIDS until like 80% of the way through this book, something like that, like a large chunk of the way through. It is so very much like assumed through the whole thing and
Right.
not said out loud. And it's taken, and everyone knows, but like nobody says it out loud for almost 80% of the book.
Mm.
And then finally somebody says it out loud. And I think that that speaks volumes about
Yes.
what that time was like.
Yep.
Um, yeah, it's beautifully, beautifully done. I absolutely adored it. And it's like so wonderfully queer. It's so good.
Yeah. I think one of the times that you visited me were in McKay, I think that's when you mentioned that they were connected.
Mhm.
Uh, and I think I bought it that day when we were out. So yes.
Yeah.
I'm excited to get to those. Yeah. That
Yeah.
sounds
And like
wonderful.
the hours I think was supposed to be the title, or was a working title at some point, because throughout um when you read Mrs. Dalloway, one of the things, there's so many things in there. You keep reading it. It's so like exquisitely like written. It's just you can dig through that text. It's great. Um, there's just you can hear the clocks ringing throughout the story.
Mm.
So like, and time is just such a heavy
Yeah.
piece of the story. Along with about a dozen other things.
Yeah.
Really good. Oh, but
Wow.
speaking of Virginia Woolf, in February, there is somebody on Substack. You can find them if you look at Tosh, Tash, and I think their page is called like Wolfish. They hosted a Mrs. Dalloway read along at the end, like latter half of last year that I adored. They do some great, like great, insightful, like just wonderful posts for a read along. Um, and there's great discussions. They're doing To the Lighthouse in February. So if anybody wants to read To the Lighthouse and is finds it intimidating, Tosh does a really great job of breaking down Wolf, pulling in different insights and making it really approachable.
Hmm.
So that's
Subscribed.
happening. Yeah, I love that. I love their feed. It's fantastic.
Substack is amazing. Okay,
Mhm.
yeah, because this is my year that I'm getting into a few authors, and Virginia Woolf is one of them. So that is
I mean,
exciting.
and she might not be for you. I mean, her writing style is Um, I really like to listen to Virginia Woolf because I feel like her word choice is very deliberate and it has a
Hmm.
like a it's not just about like the meaning of the words. I think and anybody who loves Virginia Woolf can jump in and tell me I'm wrong, but when I read it, I feel like the sounds of the words are also incredibly important. Like the way that they are put together, the way that a sentence is structured, the flow, it has a musicality to it in addition to all the other layers of it. So I really like to listen to her. There's certain
Okay.
people I just really like to listen to and read along. You know, I listen to almost
Yeah.
everything, but like some of it's just like I'm doing stuff. So I'm trying to like maximize
Yeah.
what I'm reading. But like there's some people I love to hear their work spoken and because there's a whole new layer of it like when you hear somebody reading it sometimes. So like I feel like The Waves is like that. You can feel there's like a lyricism that kind of mirrors like a wave and stuff. It is many layered and beautiful, and
Huh.
maybe she's not for everybody, but if I encourage everyone to always give her a try and see if
Yeah.
you like her because there's just so much in there. If you do find out that you love her, it's so much fun to kind of dig through
Right.
her writing because there's just so much in it.
I'm very excited.
Did not know this is going to turn to Virginia Woolf like simping, but it's
I'm very
always a
excited.
possibility.
I'm very excited. Okay. So today I'm recommending just a fantastic book. Okay, so on January 1, um no, on December 31st, I joined this horror book club on Fable, and he announced that his January book was Bury Your Gaze. And I was like, "Oh, I wanted to read that book. That was on my list." So I got the book, and January 1, I was just going to read a little bit of it. And I ended up reading the whole thing. Bury Your Gaze by Chuck Tingle. First of all, this book I did not expect to be so fun and so highly entertaining. So I just kind of couldn't stop reading it because I was just in it. So when we start Bury Your Gaze, we meet Misha, who is a screenwriter, and he's been nominated for an Oscar for some AI film or something. And when he goes to meet with one of the execs at the studio, he thinks, well, he's not really sure why he's meeting him, but when he gets there, the exec tells him that he needs to change the ending to another show he's been writing for some years. And so what Misha wanted to do was to have these two characters in this show, these two male characters, finally get together as a couple, and express their love. And the studio exec guys, like, the big guys at the top, they really want you to kill them off, basically. And so he goes into
Mm.
this whole thing about, oh, this is what Hollywood does. You always want to bury your gaze, right? And he's like, well, I'm going to write it how I want to write it. And the exec's like, well, you can do that. Just know we're going to sue the hell out of you. So get ready for that. And so that's it. He's made his decision. He's going to do it. Um, Something weird begins to happen in this book, in this story, where Misha encounters these people who he realizes are enacting the scary characters that he's written in the movies throughout the years. Misha's known for writing these horror films, and so someone has basically, I don't know, put together a group of people who dress up just like these characters in his movies and basically stalk him. Um, and things get really weird from there and really scary. And when you find out like what's really going on, it's like, get the hell out of here. What? It was just so fun. This is one of the most entertaining books I have read in a really, really long time. It gave you a good creep factor because as he's going through meeting these people cosplaying as characters from his movies, when you think about it, like if this happened in real life, I would crap my effing pants. You know what I'm saying? It was so wild. It was so wild. If you are looking for just a fast-paced, highly entertaining read, but that also has some deep messaging about queerness and Hollywood and corporate greed, Bury Your Gaze is it. Bury Your Gaze by Chuck Tingle. Get it, read it. It's phenomenal.
Um, what's the name of your horror thing that you're doing on Fable in case people want to join?
Oh, what is the name of that club? Well, 1 second, please. The
But then
name of the
also,
club is Horror Hounds. That's the name of the club on Fable. Horror Hounds.
so if anybody wants to join you, they can join you over there.
Yeah, it's not my club. It's a club I
Not that
joined.
it's your club,
Yeah,
but just in case they wanna go
yeah,
over there and join you if they were looking for one as well. And then I've always wanted to read Chuck Tingle, and I just haven't. I know that he's very well regarded in
yeah. I only knew about Camp Damascus. That's the only one that I know
Mhm.
about. But heck, man, this Bury Your Gaze was that was fun. That was
I
a good
definitely
time.
I definitely have at least Camp Damascus on my Kindle. I think I got an e-arc of it a bajillion years ago.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I'm glad you liked it. I don't know why I haven't read Chuck Tingle. I don't have an answer for you. I just haven't.
right. I just want to show for the folks on video his his author photo in the book.
Oh, yeah,
Um
he always wears a thing.
that is I was like, "Oh, look at you go, Chuck."
Yeah, he's always like that. Because Chuck Tingle, Nat Cassidy, and, like, CJ Lee do a lot of interviews together because 'cause they're, like, all in the
Oh.
same, like, genre and I think the same pub house. So, like
Oh, okay. All right. So they're the horror brat pack.
so you'll see them all together a lot, and it's always Chuck Tingle in his little pink
His
thing.
crew. It's phenomenal. Just so fun.
Mhm.
All right.
Yeah. So that was
We
good. That
did
was
it.
nice. So you have lots to read going into 2025, so you
Yes,
can't
you
say you
do.
don't know what to read. You got lots of suggestions. It's a little highlight reel. Naomi's gonna talk about more on her Substack, so go
Yep.
subscribe to that. I have videos coming out, so, subscribe to that if you wanna know more. If this wasn't enough, you need more.
Right. Of course, they need more. They need our 2025 book club picks. So go to our website, TBR Lowdown, and see what books we have for that. I just ordered all of the books last night, so they'll be coming soon. Yes, check out our 2025 book club picks. We read Women of Translation, and we are super excited about those picks for this year.
Mhm.
I
It's a
think we
really
did a bang
interesting
up
list.
job picking those. Yeah.
I didn't realize the book for January and February was so short.
Yes.
I was like, "Oh," like, it's like 160 pages. I was like, "Oh,
Yes, I did
nice."
that on purpose. To like ease us in to the year, ease us into the year.
Thank you, thank you.
Anyway,
I appreciate you.
follow us everywhere at TBR Lowdown. Visit our website, tbrlowdown.com, and recommend this podcast to 15 friends. That number just feels right in my soul today, 15. So recommend to 15 friends. And please leave us a review wherever you listen to this podcast. It helps us out tremendously. All right, that's going to do it for
Mhm.
us. We are out of here. Bye.
Bye.